Welcome gentlemen to this Project 5 video. Now I'm going to try and keep this as brief as I can because there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done in here. So to achieve that, there's going to be a fair bit of me pausing the video and cutting and pasting things over, where you can also pause and do the same thing. Okay, let's have a look and see what we're trying to produce here. Well, this is the final product of what we're going to try and produce. Okay, so just scroll through that without going too fast. Okay, so it's a basic web page, text with a couple of images, a couple of interesting things here. We've got some basically a caption that I want to put with this image here, and also have a look at the fonts used. These are non-standard fonts. So what I've done for the headings is to use an online font from Google, and the main body text is a downloaded font that we're going to use using a website called Font Squirrel to help us get this font and to download it. Okay, so to begin with, what you're going to need to do is you need to create a Project 5 folder, and then inside that you're going to need to put these three folders here: fonts, images, text files, and you'll need to create an index page. Now I've already got one that's completed. You won't have that obviously, so index. Now if you're using Notepad++, then save that in that Project 5 folder as index. I'm actually going to be using Dreamweaver here a bit today to help me develop these pages, but I'm going to try and avoid using any of the sort of fancy tools that Dreamweaver's got, so you can do exactly the same thing inside Notepad++. Okay, to begin with then, what we're going to need to do is to create a blank file, and then inside that blank file we're going to need to put, for a start, the text. Now I'm just jumping here to Notepad, OneNote I should say, and you'll find for Project 5, if you look at that, that there is this files down here that we're going to need to use. So the greenhouse text, that is the text for this project, and the two images are these ones here. So put the text file excuse me, inside your text folder, and the two images inside the images folder. Alright, so here guys, inside your index file, you might notice here I've put in a title already, so greenhouse gases and the environment. And I've put a fair bit of styling. Now I actually would recommend that this styling goes into your template. Okay, so most of this was seen before in other projects, so I'm not really going to spend any time explaining this at the moment, but this is going to basically allow us to use some reasonably good styling already set up for our text mainly. So if you need to, pause the video at this stage and just put this into your template file, and then open that up, save it as index inside Project 5. Okay, so once you've got that done, what we're going to need to do is to get hold of the text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to OneNote here, and I'm going to just double click on that file, and here it is opening, not in Notepad++, but OneNote, sorry, just Notepad, and that's perfectly fine. Any text editor will do. And I'm just going to go Control A and Control C to copy. Okay, I think I've got it all, and let's go now to my web page, and inside the body tags I'm going to paste that in. Okay, so having pasted that in, excuse guys, that's the phone going, so I'm just going to ignore at this stage. If we have a look at save this page as it is, Okay, this is how the web page is looking at the moment, okay, with those default fonts. Okay, now I would like this page to be centered and also to have a width of 850 pixels. So I'm going to insert a div, which is like a container, and I'm going to give it a label using a class, and I'm going to call that wrapper. Now, you need to make sure that you close the div. This is a common mistake for people starting off with web design, not to close their divs properly. Okay, I'm also putting a comment in here just to indicate to me that this is where the wrapper should end. So if there's any problems later on with the page, one of the problems might be that the divs haven't been closed properly, and this will tell me where wrapper should end. Okay, so having done that, let's just style that wrapper. Okay guys, so I've put in a rule for wrapper, so notice the full stop here, okay, and then the rest of this, so the width 850, margin left and right being auto, so it's centered inside the browser window, and I'm putting margin top and bottom, so we have a bit of space at the top and bottom of the page. But save that, have a quick look. You can look at that in your browser. I'm using live view here, but you can also just look at that inside a browser just like I've done now as well. Notice the space at the top there, and it's centered inside the browser window. Okay, so let's get perhaps the first of these fonts that we want to use. So I want to use a special font for H1 and H2. Now the font I'm going to use is one from Google. So I've jumped to the browser here, and I'm simply going to do a search for Google Fonts. This hit here is what we want. Now there are literally thousands and thousands of different fonts available here online through Google, and you've got different categories here, and once you start scrolling down it just keeps on going and going and going. So sometimes it's a good idea to do a bit of a search on Google for what are considered to be some good web fonts, or you can spend time searching through the different kinds of fonts until you find one that you want. Now, for headings or even body text, we don't want something which is too out there. We want something which is looks good, but is not going to distract the reader from reading the content of our page. Now, I'm just going to go back here to my website, and I've already chosen these two fonts here as the ones that I want. This Varela and Aklonika. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but let's get this Varela one first. So how would I do that? I'm going to search for it. Okay, so there's Varela. Okay, and what I need to do now is I'm going to basically go to this quick use. So this is the one I want here, not the round one. So I'm going to click on quick use, and this is showing me basically how it's going to look. Now if you scroll down the page a little bit, it says add this code to your website and add this basically to where you got the font family specified. So I'm simply going to copy that link, go back to where I've got my web page, and then in the head section is where you need to put this link, but not inside the style. So inside the head section, but above where it's got style. Go back to here and just check again what I need to put in here. So Varela inside quotation marks. So let's find this rule for H1, H2. and let's type in Varela, comma. Okay, and all going well. Let's save that page. Let's go to live view. Okay, and yes, you might be able to see here that this basically, I think, is what we wanted. Let me just check here. So just pause the video for a sec just to check on something, but this is correct. Okay, so this font here for H1, H2 is now that Varela font. Now the other one I wanted again was the one called Aklonika. So let's see if we can do a search for that. Okay, here it is, and that is not the one I'm after. Oh yes, it is actually. It's a second sort of font I was after there for possibly use in the headings. So let's copy that at the moment, and let's put that over into our page. Okay, and the font name, let's copy that and put that over here. Once again, as a second possible font for the headings. And if we didn't have this one, let's cut that just temporarily, save the page, look at that in live view. Didn't have that spelt right. Let's try that again. It's still not coming through properly. Okay, just had to open the browser otherwise because Dreamweaver wasn't behaving properly, and that's that. And to be quite honest, it's not probably a very good font for this kind of page here. Okay, but maybe for other pages it might be quite nice. Okay, so let's go back to our code here, and I want to put back that original font. So Control V, let's paste that in, and hopefully in live view, no, it's still not refreshing properly. Let's go to a browser again. Okay, that's the font that I'm after. Okay, so that's one way in which we can get fonts onto our page. This method here of linking to online fonts and then including the name of the font where you've got the font family specified. Okay, now another way in which you can insert fonts is to download the fonts and have them part of your website. The disadvantage of this linking is that your site needs to basically be online, which you might think is a given, but sometimes you might be working on a website or page and you actually don't have proper internet access, and then your page, your fonts won't look correct. So a way around that is to use fonts which are downloaded and are part of your site. So that's why here you might see we've created a folder called fonts, and if I go inside this, for me, I've actually got some fonts in here already. So how did I get those? Well, we're going to head back to the internet for a moment, and part of this 20 best web fonts, which was obviously some sort of competition, there are good fonts specified from Google, but also this thing called @FontFace. Now that is another way that you get fonts onto your page. So I'm going to just scroll down here till we come to this font called Delicious, which is a font I'm going to use as the body text for my page, the main paragraph font. Okay, so how do I get to that? Well, if I click on that, it brings me to this page here. Okay, and I'd like to be able to download this. So here it says download off site. So if I click on that, it takes me to this Font Foundry page, and notice it's a free download. One thing you need to be careful of with fonts is that people own them. They're like any other intellectual property, they're owned. So unless they're free, you normally have to pay a licensing fee. Okay, so for this one, since it's free, we're going to use it, and I'm going to be using the PC Open type font. So I'll click on download here, and after a little bit of time, it's downloaded here. So I'm going to show that in the folder where I've got my some of my stuff here. I'm going to cut that from there, put it somewhere where I can basically expand it or unpack it. So let's paste that there, and I'm going to extract it from here. Right, so inside this, now you'll see that we've got these open type fonts, which is good, except that not all browsers use this open type font file. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to head back to Font Squirrel, and let's okay, so I've just done a Google search for Font Squirrel, so fontsquirrel.com is where we need to go to. Let's go to the home page, and I need to go to this thing called Web Font Generator, and this is going to take those fonts that we just unpacked and put them into other formats that browsers can understand. So I'm going to click on Upload Fonts, and now I need to browse to where I had that unpacked folder. Okay, so here it is, Delicious 123. Now, one thing about Font Squirrel is that you can only work with 4 of these at a time. So I'm going to work with bold, italic, and Roman. And Roman is the default one I'm going to use. So let's click open there, and you need to tick that. And this is going to take a little bit of time to generate, so I'm just going to pause the video here. Okay, now that it's finished basically uploading things, okay, you can see that here are our 4 fonts. And yes, I've ticked the agreement here, that's important. Yes, the fonts I'm uploading are legally eligible for web embedding. Okay, if you go with other fonts that are not, you risk possibly legal action from the owner of the web font if they find it up there on the internet and you haven't paid your licensing fee. So click on download your kit. So after a bit of time, you'll see that this background sort of goes this greeny color, and we've got our web font kit here, also a zip file. So let me go and grab that from my folder here again. I'm going to go back to a place where I can unpack this again. So let's extract it. Okay, now this whole folder here is what I'm going to grab. So this one here and that Delicious 123. So if I grab that and the original one, let's perhaps even cut that from there, and let's head back to where I've got my website. Okay, here's my fonts, and I'm going to paste that in here. Now for me, since I've already got these, I'm going to replace the destination files. You shouldn't need to do that. Okay, now here's an earlier version. I notice it's got a different suffix here. I'm just going to go with the one I had there before. Okay, so having got that, need to go inside the Web Font Kit one. And there is a thing called, down the bottom here, there's a whole lot of different fonts here in different formats. Okay, and the one I really wanted to use was this one called Delicious Roman Web Font. Okay, the EOT one here. Okay, now if I open that style sheet, and let me just use Notepad. Okay, that's not looking too hot there. No, I can't really read it that well. So let me see if I can open that with just inside Adobe here for a moment. Okay, this is the information that comes through from the style sheet, really, that Font Squirrels created for you, and the one I want to use really was this Roman web font. I don't really want the italic or the bold one, so I'm going to grab this here. Let's copy that and let's go to my web page, and I need to put that in here somewhere. Now this is part of your styling, so it needs to go inside the style sheet. Let me just put it down the bottom here. Okay, now that's all looking pretty good. There is a problem though, that the path here isn't the correct path. Let me show you what I mean. Now, if this was working properly, we should be able to specify this font, and let's put it here as part of the body font family. Now if I look at that inside a browser, sorry guys, make sure I'm on the right page. Okay, the font that you're seeing here, this font here, is just Verdana. It is just the font here, this one. Okay, so the Delicious Roman one hasn't come through. So what we're going to need to do is we need to actually put the correct path in. Now I'm just going to show you how that should look from one that I've already done. Okay, so we have a folder called fonts, and then I have another folder called web font kit dash, and then all these numbers here. Okay, now you have to get that right the first time, but then you can copy and paste it to these other ones here. So I'm actually just going to save myself a little bit of work and put that in here. Okay, now if I have a look at that now inside the browser, okay, as you can see, the font now is different from what we had before. Okay, so I think this is probably long enough for this video here. I think if we can get our fonts correct, having downloaded them, okay, that'll do for this particular video, and we'll do a separate one for putting in the images and creating that caption. Okay, so guys, have a go at this. If you have any problems, please email me, or if it's in class time, see me during class.